This is Next Radio 2016 with Broadcast Bionics. Innovative solutions for creative people.
How you going, guys? So my name's Craig Bruce, and I've travelled such a long way to be here, but I did get some sleep on the plane, feeling good, ready to go. So when you hear someone on the air and they're really good at what they do you ever think to yourself, how do they get to become so good? So that's what I want to talk about today. I used to be this guy here, head of content at Southern Cross Austereo, Australia's largest radio company, lots of radio stations right around Australia. And now I'm this guy here, completely transformed, as you can see. So I've got a website, craigbrucecoaching.com, podcast, which we're going to talk about today, radiogamechangers.com. And, you know, when I came out of Southern Cross Austereo, I'd been there for a long time, been there for 20-odd years, and I thought to myself, well, what do I want to do next? And working with talent, working with shows, working on the performance with the performance was what I loved most. So here I am, I'm a radio consultant, a talent coach. So that decision was pretty easy. The next step was to go, okay, well, how do I market myself to people who don't know who I am? It's, you know, one thing, I'm reasonably well known in Australia, but in places like the UK, I'm doing some work in Canada and New Zealand now. How do they find out about what I do and who I am? So I had two things going for me. I was on the air for a long time in Australia and pretty comfortable in front of a microphone. And I'm pretty good at talking about radio. You know, I could talk the leg off a chair when it comes to radio, and I like talking to radio people about radio. So that really became the genesis, the seed of the idea for the Game Changers podcast. I wanted it to be a study of success in broadcast. I wanted to focus on, you know, the rituals, the habits, the process, the technique of really good radio presenters and find out how they became so good at what they do. So over the last 6 months, I've spoken to 12 of the cream of the crop, the best presenters in Australia that I could find. And it's been an amazing experience. I mean, I was a content director over a number of years, worked with a lot of shows, but I've learned so much over the last 6 months, and I'm here to share some of those thoughts with you. So 12 really unique individuals. They do have one thing in common, and I'm going to play some audio to you over the next 18 minutes. There's this piece of audio that I can't play for you, though, and it's interesting. It's the exchange that happens at the end of each podcast when we take off our headphones and turn the microphone off, and the person on the other side of the desk says to me, "How did I go? Was that okay? Did I give you what you want?" And for me, it's kind of interesting. You know, these guys are really successful and good at what they do, and they're clever and they're funny. And yet there's that degree of uncertainty that is in pretty well every performance they have. And I reckon it goes right to the heart of the content director, producer, talent relationship. There's this tension that exists between what we expect of talent, which is to be vulnerable and real and authentic on the air, and the absolute skill and sometimes bravery that it takes to do it. So this guy here is Matt Tilley. Matt has dominated the Melbourne market for the last 20 years, from the late 90s all the way through the last decade, #1 shows on Fox FM, and a star of the Melbourne market. And he talked about this idea of dealing with uncertainty on his podcast.
This is a job where every day of my life, I'm still not sure how something's going to go. But I'm like, this might be funny, I think. I don't know. I wonder if this will sing for people or not, right? So you're never certain. I don't think there's been a single day of my life where I've gone, I've got 3 spots tomorrow that I know we'll all be fighting for 10 past 8 or whatever. You don't. So you're always uncertain about everything.
So just some context. This guy's been on the radio for 15 years, 20 years, #1 shows, still not sure about what he's bringing into the station every morning. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? And I think it's true for most presenters. And if it is true, as producers and content directors, what do we do with that information? How do we use that? Support, respect, empathy, understanding that what they do being real and authentic on the air, it's unbelievably exhilarating, but it's pretty scary as well. So this is Chrissie SWAN. Chrissie is an amazing performer. She does a breakfast show in Melbourne on Nova. Everywhere she goes, an audience follows her. Great storyteller, brilliant turn of phrase, and she has this warmth and generosity of spirit on the air. She's incredible. And we talked about what she needed from her content director when we spoke.
For me, I like someone who likes me, and I need to know really in my bones that you like me and that you care about me. I know it sounds really like unradio related, but that's really important to me because my work is my life. My kids are in it, my partner's in it. So I need to know that they like me. I need to know that they trust me.
So it's interesting, isn't it? I need my content director to like me because I'm doing me on the air. So, I mean, the thing is you can have really high expectations around a bunch of things. The admin of the show, what time you need to be in planning meetings, what kind of content you need to bring to the show, what does next level content look like. You can set really clear and high expectations around that. But in terms of the performer being themselves on the air, you have to be unconditional. They are unique, interesting, often complicated individuals, but they have to know you're in their corner. Hamish Blake. Who knows Hamish and Andy? Pretty good show, isn't it? Goes okay. Hamish is one of the great human beings that God put breath into, just a terrific bloke. And the story behind Hamish and Andy is really interesting. They spent 5 years in development at Austeria. And when I say that, they did weekend breakfast shows, late nights, filled in for breakfast, 5 years of development, and they really bought in on the process of learning about the fundamentals of putting together a radio show. And we talked about that during his podcast.
I think everyone's the same. You come in going, man, we're going to break all the rules. And then you realise at least 95% of the rules are there because they work.
Yep.
And they work because of the constraints of radio. Like you can't throw the rule book out the window till you've read the rule book.
Yep.
Because then there's an embarrassing slide out the window to retrieve the rule book. So I think it was that, like, we realised that too. We were kind of coming to that conclusion of that mix between going, here's the way it's always been done, and some of those things are really right for a reason. But then once we learn those inside out, then we can probably get a better idea of what areas we reckon we could be better than the norm in, or we could challenge a convention a little bit. And I guess what that is just the process of finding your voice.
Yes, folks, there is a radio rule book. It's been written by old blokes like me, and it is useful. It really is. Learn it before you start trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, I've found working with young shows, young shows that have ambition and talent, they're impatient. They want to get from first base to home run without having the foundational aspect of the show in place. So if you're working with young shows, one of the key things is to keep them grounded in the fundamentals for as long as you can until they become virtually a reflex action. That was certainly the case for Hamish and Andy. All of the game changers that I've spoken to over the last couple of months have been really clear, crystal clear on what they're good at. So this is MICK MOLLOY. Mick's got a career in Australian radio that is literally second to none. He's had number one shows on FM for 20 years. And back in the mid-90s, he and a guy called Tony Martin did the first national drive show in Australia called Martin Molloy. It literally revolutionised comedy on radio. And so these guys were in their mid-20s when they were doing this show, and they were absolutely super clear about what they could do that other shows couldn't.
We were lobbing to our forehand, which was, we were writers. We were more writers than performers. Performing was still fairly fresh to us, but we knew we could probably outright most people.
Yeah.
We knew there was, at least in that department, what can we do better than most? Write comedy.
Right.
Okay, well, let's concentrate on that. And then over the journey, we became stronger performers.
Yeah.
Can I just say that again? Lobbing to your forehand, it's just a brilliant metaphor, isn't it? It's a brilliant metaphor for radio and for whatever you want to do. Find out what you're good at. And it's amazing how many shows don't go through that process. It's probably the number one question you've got to answer at some point through the history of your show. What the hell are we good at here? And have we designed a show where we're playing to our forehands? And as you hear Mick talk there, they were writers, brilliant writers. And the show was a sketch comedy show. And it was better than anything else on the air. And in their mid-20s, they developed this confidence and this comfortability on the radio because what they were doing every day was playing to their strengths. So, I've got 9 minutes to go, all right? Might just pad this out a bit. I'm going to finish with the 3 C's. Chemistry, curation, and conversation. So this is Marty SHEARGOLD talking about chemistry. Marty's a really, really good broadcaster. He's been on a number of really successful shows in Australia. The show that he's on at the moment, Nova in Australia, is beating Hamish and Andy at the moment. That's how good the show is. And every show he's on, there is chemistry. He just has this ability to connect people and bring people together. So we talked about the idea of chemistry and what that means in the context of radio.
It's an ease of conversation, and it's a turn of phrase, and it's a comfortability between people that just does or doesn't happen. And, you know, you cannot force it. It's either there or it's not. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a loving relationship. You know, chemistry can be equally negative, but still really present and make great radio. I mean, they always talk about drama and conflict, and that's very true. Conflict can be as interesting as people getting along and can be equally as successful. So there needs to be a form of chemistry there.
So chemistry either does or doesn't happen. It can evolve. There's no question about that. You know, chemistry can build over a period of time. In fact, one of the things you find with shows that are starting to build an audience, if you have research and you're talking to listeners about the show, one of the things they'll say to you is, you know, there's rapport between the hosts, or sounds like the hosts are starting to gel, or sounds like they're having fun together, or it sounds like it's more natural than it was before. Yeah, that's chemistry. That's listeners speak for chemistry. And if there is no chemistry, it's pretty simple. You just got to back the truck up and get the hell out. You've got to just start again, because you can't be successful on the radio unless whoever you're working with, you have something going on. Curation is, I'm really big on curation, I really am. I think it's probably, you know, it's probably the most important element of really successful radio. So in my mind, curation is the art of moving away from the pack, not closer to it. You know, radio is one of those classic Me Too convergence industries. You know, who's the leader? Let's follow them. And virtually every game changer I speak to finds a different path. So once again, back to Tony Martin and Mick Molloy, this is a great anecdote on how they viewed the art of curation.
I remember one day we had a stand-up argument because we didn't want to interview Celine Dion.
Right.
And they couldn't work it out. And we go, we just don't think our show is not going to rise or fall on whether we interview Celine Dion. I remember Brian Adams coming in going, can you tell me why you won't interview? You won't talk to us. We said, look, it's nothing. And he was flying at that stage. There's nothing personal.
Yep.
But we don't know what we're going to talk to you about. So we knew if we'd lost control of the show, we would have quickly become another show on that dial, and we would have lost anything that we wanted to do.
Now, there's some people in the audience that you might not know if you were born in the 90s. Brian Adams and Celine Dion were a big deal, right? They might not be now, but they were. You know, and on Australian radio in the mid-90s, every radio show spoke to Brian Adams and Celine Dion, for Christ's sake. That's what you do. If you're on the radio, you talk to Brian Adams and Celine Dion. There was only one show on Australian radio that didn't talk to Brian Adams and Celine Dion. It was the number one show on Australian radio. So what happens, I think, with really great shows is that they eventually break with convention and just find their own path. You know, they just learn to zig when others zag. It takes a bit of guts to do it, but that's where they end up. You know, and they end up with this sound, this sonic package that is just different to the rest based on the choices that they make. So finally, conversation. You know, it's the standard thing, conversation radio. It's important. Sure, it's important. But I think this is a great example of how conversation can be really powerful on the radio. So this bloke here, Richard Stubbs, is a pioneer on Australian radio. He was the first stand-up comedian to cross over to radio in the mid-80s, and then he dominated FM through the 90s, and then he pivoted in the early 2000s and spent 11 years doing talk radio on the ABC. So an incredible performer. So he's had 11 years on the ABC, and when it came to say goodbye to his audience, this is how he had that conversation with his audience.
You and I need to talk. Whenever you hear those words, it's never good, right? It's never, you and I need to talk. Yeah, you've won $1 million. Nah, it's not that. You and I need to talk because on Friday I gave my resignation.
Well, it came from the heart, but I think that why do radio even exist? If you're doing it right, it's personal. You know, if you're connecting, it's personal. What makes radio unique is its one-on-one relationship that you can set up with hundreds of thousands of however many you're broadcasting to. But it's got to be personal.
That farewell speech went for 12 minutes, and you can find it online. It's a thing of beauty, trust me. It's very, very good. But you and I need to talk. It's 6 words, isn't it? But it really captures the power and the beauty of radio done well. You know, you and I need to talk. And the thing that Richard talks about in the podcast is that for broadcasters, that intimacy has to be reflected in the presentation. You need to think of it in those terms and you need to frame it in that way, because there might be hundreds and thousands of people listening, but at the end of the day, you and I need to talk. Thanks a lot, guys.
This is Next Radio 2016 with Broadcast Bionics. Innovative solutions for creative people.